of people like Billy Mitchell and Hap Arnold, who are famous names in that regard. And
Was he here in Hawaii?
he had been in Hawaii in the mid-30s in charge of the Army Air Corps in Hawaii, and then had gone to Washington, D.C. and been in charge of protecting the airspace over Washington, D.C., among other things, and had gone to London and advised the British on the Blitz. So he was very much on top of, in essence, aerial combat and long-range bombing. And he was assigned to be the replacement commander in Hawaii. And he was very highly qualified for his job.
At what point did he come to Hawaii?
10 days after the Pearl Harbor attack. The commander, Walter Short, famously was stripped of his command, and he was replaced by Emmons. And Emmons walked in the door, talked with the circles of people that I keep referring to, talked with his executive officer, who was a man named Thomas Green, who played a very key role, talked with Robert Shivers at the FBI, and 4 days after his arrival, made a broadcast that was written by Shigeo Yoshida.
That's wonderful.
Which is marvelous,
Yes.
I think. Yeah, but Hung Wai loved that. Hung Wai loved to tell that story.
Let's have a picture of Shigeo Yoshida.
Okay, yeah. It was written by Yoshida.
Yes, there he is.
And it said, support the war effort, and we will support you.
And this was being read by a man from Washington, D.C., sent to govern Hawaii, correct?
That's right, yeah.
I love that.
And so it was, 4 days into his Hawaii experience, he was convinced that this idea of loyalty is a two-way street, which was very, very fundamental to this whole development.
Yes.
Loyalty
We
is
have
a
only
two-way
5
street.
minutes left, and so go from the beginning of this move to take all the people of Japanese ancestry. I know that that's what you've really been concentrating on. So talk about from wherever you want to start on that.
Well, what happened, I think, basically was capitalizing on all these pre-war relationships and pulling as many people together as you could, and then furiously lobbying for prevention of a mass internment and opening the door to Japanese American participation in the war effort. It wasn't only Japanese American participation. There were whole programs and networks of encouraging Japanese alien participation, capitalizing on the sense that you might not have been allowed to become naturalized citizens of this country, but nonetheless Hawaii as a community has been your home, and you have done fairly well here. And we have nurtured your children, educated your children beyond whatever you could have expected in Japan, and support the war effort, give blood, cut.
And there was no question that the people who were not citizens were supporting the United States, right?
Well, everybody kept nervously, investigating them, but the reality was that they were supporting the war effort. Or there was never an instance of espionage, sabotage, or subversive activity as in the categories of internal security investigations. And so the community building aspect of all of this carried the day. So, and it certainly wasn't perfect, There were arrests, but it was it was so vastly superior to what happened in the terrible injustices of the U.S. mainland. And in terms of community building, community future, it was, I think, exemplary. Shigeo Yoshida's mantra that he kept repeating and other people began repeating was, how we get along during the war will determine how we get along when the war is over.
Yes.
And I think that kind of, in a sentence, said a lot.
And so Hong Wai-ching's role, Shigeo Yoshida seems to have been the writer, the idea man. And Hong Wai-ching's role?
Well, I knew Hung Wai, and he loved to say, Shigeo was the brains and I was the mouth. Hung Wai was a brilliant man himself. He had a degree in engineering from the University of Hawaii and a degree in social work from the University of Chicago and a degree in theology from Yale. And his social IQ was probably about 190.
You're talking about social IQ.
Yeah.
Yes.
But he was an outside man.
Yes, yes.
Shigeo was really the contemplative person, and he was a brain in many ways. I think an absolutely brilliant person. And he was known within a relatively small circle of veterans, but otherwise not really widely known in the community.
Yeah, we have only about a minute left, and I know there are other people that you want to talk about. For instance, that FBI man.
Well, the FBI man, was Robert Shivers. He was very important because he came out, and he was yet another one of these people who sort of got very quickly turned around. John A. Burns.
At what point did he come to Hawaii?
He came in August of 1939.
Oh, so he was already
there,
here.
He was there in this big lead-up.
Yes.
John A. Burns played a very crucial role.
Yes.
Burns was politically credited eventually, very belatedly, for playing an important role, and indeed he did. I haven't talked about him sufficiently here, but he was, hand in glove in this network. And just as briefest thing then, Jack Burns was the connecting link between these movements and statehood.
And there was a woman involved, correct?
The woman was a Japanese-American student boarder who lived with the Shivers family. And they had never known an Asian at that point. And Robert Shivers would come home after work and sit on the living room floor and talk with her about what her experience was growing up in Hawaii, what it meant to be a Japanese American.
Thank you very much for listening.